What's up, you guys? It's B Mage, the modern day hope dealer, not dope dealer, here with another Train for Triumph Leadership podcast. We have a phenomenal leader here with us today who's going to be able to really give us a great insight and perspective on leadership throughout his profession, throughout his mindset, and throughout his journey as well. So with no further ado, you know I love to get straight to the point. We ain't gonna waste no time at all getting to the point, getting to the information, the contact. And most important, just the empowerment is really, really powerful piece. We're gonna go right to it. All right, so you guys, we have Jeffrey Roche here today. He is a phenomenal leader in the healthcare field, in the business field, and he's here with us to be able to share some of his time and insight on the importance of leadership. You know, we're heavy on leadership, and especially the perspectives on different people from different demographics, different professions, different races, different all over the world, different. If you can think about it being unique and different, you want to hear everybody's perspective on leadership throughout their journey. So Jeff, to start us off, can you just give everybody a little bit of brief background about who you are, where you're from, and what you do?
Sure. Well, it's great to be here with you. And let me just say that, first off, I started my career in healthcare in June of 2008, son of a nurse. And so that's in many ways what it was a strong influence. But leadership has always been really important to me, even from my time in college. And I was fortunate to go to a college that, to your point, felt strongly about leadership. And it was actually a part of all of our curriculum and was part of all of our extracurricular activities as well. And so I was fortunate to be mentored by a Black administrator on leadership, and still think highly of him. He's actually an administrator at Kutztown University, and the role that he played in my life as a college student was profound. But throughout my career, I've been in healthcare, and mostly majority time in healthcare, and then also time in higher education as well. And so my work is all about building strategic partnerships to advance not just relationships, but outcomes, whether that's in healthcare or higher education. And so I do that at Dignity Health Global Education, but I also wear many other hats, and also still teach for two colleges and universities: Moravian University, my alma mater, and then Harrisburg University of Science and Technology.
I love it. That Moravian. I went to Susquehanna, so we played a couple good battles with Moravian.
Yep. Usually we won. The Greyhounds number one.
Yeah, so I'm definitely familiar with Moravian, man. So that's great. And your educational background. So, okay, you went to Moravian. How was your experience in regards to education and leadership as well?
Yeah, so I did my undergrad at Moravian, Bachelor of Arts, political science, and leadership. Like I said early, was really a core foundation of our experience there. We had a program called Leadership, which was a phenomenal program that I was part of. And the individual I was referencing earlier, Dr. Warren Hilton, led that and led we had an entire department focused on leadership development. And that was key. It was leadership development. Dr. Hilton always said to us, no one is assumed to have leadership. We all can be developed, and we can all be further developed as leaders. And so, that was a core aspect. And that was everything from courses to, in fact, they embedded it into the curriculum. And it was also a core element of alumni and the college. And some of my biggest memories were actually, college administrators holding one another accountable when dealing with students around leadership. And then I did my master's, actually a management, Master of Science in Management Leadership in Public Administration at East Stroudsburg University. And so that was another program, very much huge focus in leadership, primarily looking at leadership in not-for-profit and government sectors.
I love it. So even as a professor, what is your current perspective on student leadership today with the new school mentality, the new school experiences that students are having, even leadership right now, even through COVID?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Like I mentioned, I teach for Moravian University and then also for Harrisburg University. And so, very different populations between both institutions. But, what you see is students, whether at the undergraduate level or at the graduate level. So I teach at the graduate level, so I can only really speak to the graduate level, but I've been an administrator, also in undergraduate environments as well. And I think what you see is students that are hungry for leadership. And particularly at the graduate level, what you see people that are in the workplace, whether they're in healthcare, whether they're in business, and they're around leaders who are just not good. They're not leaders who empower, they're not leaders who encourage, they're not leaders who mentor or coach. And I'm a huge fan of feedback. And I think leaders need to also be able to receive feedback just as much as they give feedback. And one of the things you'll always hear me preach on is that leaders don't listen enough. And so, leadership starts with L, and it starts with listening. And so I really profound and really seek in all of my opportunities of leadership to first listen, hear what people have to say, hear what's, their challenges, hear where I can be a beacon of hope or really help them in the process of whatever that process may be. And so I really see a lot of soul searching around that and a desire for leaders to help them.
So what are the courses that you teach at Moravian and Harrisburg U?
Yeah, so at Moravian, I teach a course. It's on the graduate level of their MHA and their MBA program, and it's actually healthcare ethics, the legal system, and also and the regulatory system. And so it's health ethics, legal, and regulatory. It's at the graduate level. So predominantly, ironically, most of my students are actually nurses, and because it's part of the nurse practitioner requirements as well. And so it's really an awesome opportunity. As a previous hospital administrator, to give back and serve. At Harrisburg, I actually haven't started teaching yet. I'm actually developing the course for them, which then I'll ultimately teach. And that's going to be in the political determinants of health. It's part of their population health program. And so it's going to look at the leadership of population health and how we need to develop leaders who are going to advocate. And so all of those core elements are really, really important from an advocacy perspective.
Wow. That's amazing.
But I've also previously taught for Lebanon Valley College as well in their MBA program. All have been in healthcare, but leadership is always talked about in all of my programs. Regardless of the topic, we talk about leadership and what it means to lead, environments that are safe, environments that have excellence in them, those types of things.
I love it. So I'm really excited about the fact that a lot of your students are healthcare workers or already nurses. They're really, really essential people in our time right now. I want to get right back to that too. So for yourself though, G, is that as a leader yourself, what would you consider your own top 3 leadership strengths?
Sure. Yeah. So, collaboration. So being extremely collaborative, strategic, and really, that really comes in both thinking, but mindset. And then also commitment. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. Even if it's not something I want to do, I'm going to do it. And so those would be my 3.
I love it. So with those, that collaboration and strategic thinking and commitment, those are real powerful. And I feel like I always say that there is collaboration is the key to elevation.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, really important to be able to collaborate with like-minded people so people can evolve together. With the strategic thinking part, I love that because again, one of my really key terms or key notes to people when I do my speaking engagements, I'm traveling all over the place, is that you have to take time to master yourself, master your thoughts, your actions, and the outcomes, and then be able to manage your thoughts, your actions, and your outcomes. And my favorite addition problem is positive thoughts plus positive actions equals positive outcomes. And that all becomes around that strategic thinking and self-mastery, which is super key. And it takes time to develop, but it's important that it's really a strategic development. And that last part is the commitment, because keeping your word is everything. Keeping your word and following things through is really, really important for young and adult leaders.
Yep.
For your healthcare workers, what are 3 things that you would tell them as they're still fresh into the healthcare world in regards to leadership, in order to be able to start at their foundational level in order to really be able to continue to evolve and climb that ladder in the healthcare field?
Yeah. So, the one of them is determination, because I think, for so many folks, obviously with what we've dealt with now over 2 years, but even before that, healthcare is an industry that has had a lot of leaders that have been there for a very long time. Sometimes that's good, and sometimes that's not so good. And I think a lot of really well-meaning future leaders have left healthcare just because of those leaders. And so you got to have determination to see it through, and really be the change that you wish to see within that environment. Because without question, many individuals could be that change. And sometimes they just have to have that determination. And, the other thing I would say is I tell all students and I tell all colleagues that you got to have a personal board of advisors, individuals that you can go to and wrestle with the challenges of a personal aspect of your life, but also your professional aspects of your life. People who you trust, but at the same time are going to hold you accountable. And that's really important because I think when we face tough challenges in leadership, I think back in my days, as a young leader in a healthcare organization that was promoted and at the time was the youngest director at the time in our organization. And our CEO did it. And she said to me, she said, people are going to question you because of your age. She said, but what they can't question is how hard you work and the relationships that you built in this region. She said, so don't let them question you. She said, I will prove you right. Follow my lead and you're going to succeed. And so, I think it's really important that people don't just settle for the status quo. Don't. If you have something that you really want to see happen, find the data, put forward the data, put together the story, the mission, the vision, the values, and make it happen.
Wow. Wow, that was a gem right there. That was powerful. That was a powerful moment right there. And I feel like that's so powerful because that's regards to anything in life. Like not even just the healthcare field, but I mean, if a person wants to be the next doctor, lawyer, firefighter, president, athlete, agent, whatever the case may be, create the next iPad or who knows. But it's those same exact steps that we just talked about, as you just mentioned, actually, is key to everything.
Yeah.
It's really, really key. I appreciate that. And that's going to be one of those things that's really going to hit home on this interview, on this talk. A lot of people, I think, there.
Yeah.
I also want to go into your why. I always ask everybody, what is your why? What is your motivation? What keeps you going? What pushes you towards continuing to evolve yourself?
Yeah. A lot of it, I think, without question, is my upbringing. And so, my grandmother, was an individual that fled Nazi Germany, despite being German herself. She didn't agree at any point in time with what was happening. And as a result of that, never had a home throughout all of her upbringing. And a lot of that was also because at the time the Russian soldiers were very much after younger German women.
Yeah.
And so her upbringing when my family came to the United States in 1963, my mother was 5, and so the upbringing that my family had was very much talked about with us from a very young age. And my grandfather was a leader. In fact, I can remember as a kid how much people in the community where we grew up saw him as a leader, as a successful businessman, and one of the first foreign car mechanics for a very, very large part of the region. But, for me, a lot of it is the upbringing around adversity, and the fact that, my grandmother, despite everything she faced, she loved everybody. And I mean everybody. And she would say to me, you don't ever judge, you don't ever criticize. You look at everybody as another person that you can build a relationship with to help and support and encourage. And that was really, really important to her. And really, as the matriarch of our family, really embedded that within all of us. And so I look at leadership as so much more like that. For me as a leader, it is my responsibility, both personally and professionally, to do all I can to help another person. Wow. And even if that means sometimes challenging those that may be above me in leadership, I got to do it. And I will proudly do it and continue to do it in my workplace and everywhere that I serve, because it's the right thing to do to support another person.
Wow. Jeff, you went to my favorite word is adversity. That's one of my favorite words and experiences in the world. And what you just said about your story right there with that story about the word adversity is what I tell, and it's another testament to the power of adversity is adversity is something that we all over the world, anybody all over the world, no matter what age, race, demographic, class that you live in, we all have been through it, growing through it, or going to go through it. So that's our common denominator.
Yeah.
So I think, and I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that same adversity, everybody faces some kind of level of adversity, which is everyone's common denominator, which should be the part that brings more people together
Yeah.
versus separates us. So
Yeah.
just as though you went to adversity, I lost my father when I was 21 years old. That's a level of adversity. And there's
Mhm.
tons of other things that everybody in this world faces and goes through with that powerful word adversity. And another mission of mine is to continue to allow adversity to be that piece that brings people together.
Yeah.
Everybody can go and meet somebody or anybody over the world. And you talk about some adversity, everybody create some kind of conversation and start a relationship.
Yep. Well, and you're right, because even in healthcare, and other industries too, where we see people work the best, oftentimes it's in crisis. Now, obviously, we're at a little different time in where we sit today, because we're dealing with a crisis, and we're dealing with a workforce that's either not there, or so impacted by trauma of a pandemic that has just hit them every time and time again. But in my healthcare days, when you'd have a trauma, when you'd have a crisis called overhead, you would see clinical and non-clinical come together and work at the highest excellence that you would ever see, and you would see true team spirit. And that's what I saw in those situations, whether it was trauma situations of bus accidents, or trauma situations of of various different elements, including manhunts of a time when there was an individual who killed state police, and we were the hospital that had to receive many of those cases. And so, you really see crisis sometimes, to your point, be an opportunity to bring the whole team together and really perform at the best level. What we've got to find is how you do that all the time,
Yeah.
because it can't just be crisis that brings. Now, what's unfortunate today is that we've seen crisis, and yet we're not seeing that idea of people coming together. And we've got to get back to that. If we can't find common ground to do that, we're in a really tough spot for a long time.
Really, 100% true. 100% true. So Jeff, as we wrap up, I always like to ask everybody a question about their own past, but hindsight 2020. So knowing what you know now about leadership, about the healthcare field, what would you tell yourself 5 years ago, 10 years ago about leadership and about the healthcare field, knowing what you know now?
Yeah, in many ways, it's an interesting question, because when I look back, um, the thing that I think I would probably tell myself if I went back, earlier in my career, um, I was part of an organization for 9 years, and we went through a merger process, and throughout that merger process, I really felt that I was going to be part of the future part of the organization, and ultimately, that wasn't the case in the end. After everything was settled and we went through reorganization, and ultimately I was part of a restructuring with other leaders. And when I look back on that, I think I was just listening to a podcast, and this was discussed, and there's elements where that's a huge impact to people, and so many leaders go through that. And um, when I look back, I know that I didn't manage necessarily how I handled it as well as I could have. And so if I went back in time, I think I would need to, really think about the fact that as a leader, there are times where you become so committed to your organization. You pour your heart and soul into every aspect of that organization. And despite the fact that and you're told you're doing a good job, you're valued, um, you're still indispensable, or I should say, you are dispensable. You're not indispensable; you are dispensable at the end of the day to an organization. And so you could be the most loyal, most committed, most devoted, but there may be somebody who either feels threatened by you, or feels that maybe you just don't align with the future strategy. And so when I look back, I think it's really that idea that in many ways I'm thankful I went through it, even though it was an interesting experience to go through. But if I look back, it would be that understanding that, yes, at the end of the day, you can work just as hard, you can do everything, but that does not mean that it's going to all work out for you.
Wow. But the back end of it is When it doesn't work out, you still keep pushing, which is exactly what you're doing, man.
Yep, you do, and I think again that's where you use your personal board of advisors, you use your
Yeah.
network, you use those people who truly care about you, because when you go through adversity, as we've talked about, you also learn who truly cares for you,
Yeah.
and who's really there for you, and so in many ways, while it's tough, uh, it's challenging. It is those types of moments in our life where we can see where the people who care the most for us are going to encourage, they're going to mentor, they're going to coach, and ultimately, to your earlier point, they're going to help elevate us back off of our feet and get moving, forward and forward. And so I've learned through that experience that again, it's my responsibility to think about anyone else that may go through that experience, because as a younger professional, often it's not us that go through it, it's usually people later in their career. And so we've got to educate, and we've got to help people understand that those types of things can happen, and it's more important about how you bounce back from it more than anything.
Man, to bounce back means more important than anything. That's another one there. Bounce back means more important than anything, which is powerful, 100% true. Jeff, man, I don't want to take too much of that, but I appreciate you being able to share some of your time, your insight, and perspective on leadership. I have a few friends myself who are in the healthcare field who are young and really, really going to be able to take some great insight from this. Even parents and different adults, or even students in general, are going to be able to take a lot of what we talked about in regards to leadership and implement it into their own life, implement some of the strategies and the perspectives and the mindset around leadership to their own life. So I definitely, definitely appreciate your time and your insight. And we'll have to definitely get you back on, especially once Harrisburg University gets back on rolling for you, just to learn more about all the courses you talk about, and even mess around and try to be able to get you a part of this healthcare group that I also know of some other familiar people who are in that healthcare field that could use some of your insight as well. So I greatly appreciate it.
Happy to. And thank you for all that you're doing, because it's your focus on leadership is more important than ever. And we've got to continue to really help people understand that they also can be a leader.
Yeah.
I never will ever subscribe to you're a born leader. Don't believe it, never will believe it. I think some people may have aspects of leadership earlier, but I truly believe that leadership is development. Throughout life we develop, and every day is another opportunity to develop.
100%. And I'm 100% with you. I don't believe anybody's a born leader. Everybody is born with leadership abilities, but everybody has to develop, and it's a nonstop, lifelong development.
Yeah.
100% with you, man. Well, gee, I definitely appreciate you guys. We just wrapped up another one with some great insight on leadership, on adversity, on pushing through, and most importantly, on bouncing back, no matter what you're growing throughout your life. So I'll make sure I'll add G's information on LinkedIn somewhere below in the comments or in the link as well. You'll also be able to see it in the description for today's podcast, so you guys can follow up. Maybe shoot them an email if you have any questions about the healthcare field as well. But we're big on support. If you have any ideas, be sure to reach out. You guys wrapped up another one. It's your boy B Major, modern day hope dealer, not dope dealer, for another podcast on leadership. We thank you for watching. We thank you for staying tuned. Be sure to share with 5 friends. All right. You know what it is. You know the vibe. Stay focused, remain humble, and keep working. Keep working. Keep